quick with introductions. We have one more teammate that is scheduled to come on, and I think we have 2 other registrants. So I want to just let folks know that this is being recorded, just so everybody is aware of that. If you have any questions about that, don't hesitate to ask. But I am planning to post this on the RFP website. Just so anybody who did not get to attend the session is able to benefit from the information. I'm going to do quick introductions, and I'd love to actually get intros from the folks that are on the call. To start out, I am Randy Norris. I am the interim co-CEO of Baltimore Public Markets and Lexington Market. We make up the market system here in Baltimore City. We have 5 markets under our umbrella, but we operate as we have 2 separate entities, so Lexington and BPMC. I am going to throw it over to Lanice just to give a quick introduction of who she is, what she's doing, and then we'll just get a quick intro from the other participants.
Good morning, everyone. Can you guys hear me okay? Okay, good. Like Randy said, I'm Lanice Taylor. I'm the manager of special projects here for the markets. And I've been here for probably 6 months, so this will be my first time going through this process with the markets. And I'm eager to figure out how we're going to do this.
For many of your questions, you'll probably be communicating mostly with Lanice. So just she's sort of the manager, all of that. Ruben, actually, Dr. Carter, you were the first on the call. So would you like to do an introduction? If not, I'll throw it to you, Ruben. All right, we'll come back to you, Dr. Carter. Ruben, you're up.
I think Dr. Carter just unmuted.
Oh, yes, I did.
Wonderful.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thanks. Good old Microsoft and their new updates frequently don't get to everyone who's not in the enterprise volume purchase. My office mate is knocking on the door, but I'm going to close that door so we can have undisrupted conversations. Yes, Market Economics, 15-year-old company. We have done early work with Baltimore economic development, looking at historic neighborhoods throughout the city and the impact of historic designations in those neighborhoods. So we have sort of a background and understanding of some of the housing dynamics in Baltimore City. We have done reports on the overall housing market for Baltimore City over several years. Our probably contribution that we can make has been looking at the catalysts for Prince George's County's Economic Development Corp in regards to what types of industries and particularly concentration of industries in Prince George's County compared to other Maryland counties, surrounding counties, sister counties of Montgomery and Howard County, and how those concentrations either give an economic advantage to the county or disadvantage. We particularly see our contributions that we can make is understanding economic markets and their contributions. In this case, you have a direct marketplace to the locality, municipality, in this case, the city of Baltimore, but I think far greater to the surrounding counties of Baltimore City. And that those markets, I think, will be surprised, provide or offer greater concentrations. I conclude those remarks. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. All right, Ruben.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Ruben Gonzalez. I'm a principal at Penchina Partners, and Penchina Partners is a values-driven strategy firm, and we support social justice organizations, movements, enterprises of all kind of types and sizes and models to be more effective, efficient, and resilient. I think we bring to this space a wealth of experience in helping kind of social justice organizations, nonprofits, become resilient, whether it's looking at funding, their modeling, communication strategy, especially in these kind of uncertain times that we find ourselves. We're working with a lot of organizations just to help them protect themselves and make sure they can keep focused on their missions, despite sort of shifts in political landscapes, policy landscape, funding landscapes, et cetera. And so excited to learn more about what you all are looking for and see if we could be a possible fit for that.
Awesome. Great. Susan?
Great. Nice to meet you, Susan Donovan. From Quantified Ventures. We are a DC-based, nationally focused social enterprise. Have done a lot of work in Baltimore with Maryland Food Bank and Turnaround Tuesday in the past. I also worked before QB in Baltimore for about 5 years. So really excited about this conversation. Our focus is on helping community organizations define and articulate their value proposition, and then be able to implement programming that matches that value proposition in a way that supports financial sustainability and impact. So happy to hear about this opportunity. And we also play well with others in terms of potential partnership opportunities here. So I'll just put that out there as well.
I love that. Awesome. Cool. Coach Nick, just a quick intro.
Good morning, everyone. Coach Nick, aka Nick Colbert, aka Coach Nick. That's what most people know me by. So I run a coaching and business development firm that's focusing on not just small businesses, but also corporations, nonprofits, and government leaders, helping them develop and streamline their processes so they can have greater results, right? So I focus on especially helping organizations generate revenues where they don't have to rely on any additional funding. So the funding that they do get will be cherry on the top rather than a necessary revenue to sustain the operations, right? So we focus on creative strategies for generating revenue, but the bulk of what we do, the cornerstone of what we do is performance gap management, and that applies to sales, marketing, ops, finances. So making sure that the systems, the teams, the leadership are clearly defining metrics and outcomes, and then connecting those metrics and outcomes to behaviors and attitudes that drive those results or hurt those results, and then having the proper systems to drive the results that they're looking for. So that's me.
Awesome. Great, thanks. So I want to just give a really brief, I know probably most of you have already looked at the RFP, but kind of give you an existing or sort of how we got here, and then open it up to questions, because really that's how I want to use most of this time for you all to dig in and ask any questions that would be helpful for you to complete the proposal. So we are hundreds of years old. Basically, the public market system in Baltimore City has been around since the 1700s. And in the 90s, we transitioned to a nonprofit model. Prior to that, we were within the government. So we were under the business development agency in the city. And we transitioned to a nonprofit model. And BPMC functions separately from Lexington Market. In the early 2000s, we transitioned into a quasi-government agency, which means that we receive about $1 million from the city each year to support the management of the buildings, because these are still city-owned buildings, and we manage them for the city. So we are an independent nonprofit, but we work very, very closely with the city of Baltimore. Hold on one second. Sorry about that, guys. And so with that being said, we have two current sources of revenue. We have the City of Baltimore grant, and then we also have our revenue raised from our tenants. The City of Baltimore provides about 40% of our operating budget. The remaining is from revenue from the rentals that we have. We have about 132 tenants across our 5 markets. So with all of that, given the fact that we are managing aging buildings, the expenses of operating are getting very challenging. We've primarily functioned as a property management entity up until about 3 years ago, and we transitioned to really thinking about what is the impact the markets can have on the community and really creating programming that complements that. So our 3 sort of focus areas are supporting small businesses owned by local residents, making sure that we're providing food options for food access, and then also really thinking about how are we digging into the cultural connections within the communities that the markets are located. And so those are sort of our 3 pillars that we've really moved into. But what I will say is I don't think we've truly explored what are the revenue potential for each of those 3 program areas. And then also what are the other opportunities, right? Like we know that from a mission driven sense, those are the 3 areas, but are there other opportunities that we can explore? And so having an outside firm really be able to take the time and dig in with our team, with our board of directors, and then also from an external position as well. So that's kind of where we see this project going and really what the focus is. As I think Susan, you might have mentioned, and actually Ruben, you mentioned it too, times are challenging and relying on government funding gets more and more unsteady as we move forward. And so we really need to dig in and think about how do we support the longevity of these amazing gems that are in Baltimore City. So that's my little pitch for the RFP. I'm going to turn it over to you guys to ask any questions that you might have for clarity of where we are or anything else that might be helpful for you as you move forward in the process. Don't be shy, guys.
I always feel like I'm the first one to talk, so I'll just bite that bullet and do it. That's super interesting and just so fantastic that you all are using this moment to think about long-term sustainability and becoming a more robust organization. So kudos for even going through this process, because we know, I'm sure everyone on this call knows that it is it's an endeavor, but a worthy endeavor. I guess my first question is when you talk about the revenue potential from those areas and other opportunities to pursue, do you have in your mind a strong sense of specific deliverables and the level of detail that you were expecting from those deliverables? Or is that something that you're looking to see in the responses in terms of what the potential vendor would envision for those things?
So I really see this as a hand-in-hand partnership. I think we internally have some ideas, but I think, we are not a deep bench. So our ability to really dig into that and explore it truly and think about where the opportunities really lie or whether it is a legitimate opportunity. I think that's the other thing that we haven't had the time is to really test these theories that we have. And so having an external party that is really dedicated to this is going to help us really create the road forward. And so I feel like we have a light blueprint, but I really think what we're looking for is for someone to come in and pressure test what we're thinking and then also explore other opportunities as it comes as well. Other questions, guys?
Yeah, this may be something of an elephant in the room, but I know you all are also identifying candidates for a CEO position, and that
Yeah.
you all co-CEOs. And my assumption is that's an interim role as co-CEOs since the position is open. And so I'm just curious about how that process might sort of overlay.
I knew someone was going to ask the question. Thanks, Ruben. So we really went back and forth on whether this was something that we should wait until a permanent the leadership position was filled. But given just sort of the consistent changing with the economy, and as we really want to move forward and think creatively about how we move forward, the board really determined that the time is now. And that, this is a very sort of foundational piece of the work that leader is going to have to take on, but having a little bit of a roadmap may actually help them in terms of how do you move forward in a very complex sort of 100-year-old organization that has a massive amount of context that's going to need to be built anyway. And so we see this as really sort of helping provide a foundation for how to move forward. I know our board is going to be very involved in this process because they have a strong interest in ensuring, our financial sustainability moving forward, as boards do, right? And so I think that it is something that once a provider is decided upon, we'll create really a roadmap in terms of how do we onboard this project with a new leader. And I think that's part of sort of the onboarding process for whoever becomes the formal or the permanent CEO.
Thanks.
And so what about implementation? So once you provide the systems, the strategies, this is how you do it, deliverables, then what about the implementation? Would you need support with the CEO for implementing?
So we don't see the implementation as part of this agreement. Really, the idea is that we have a package that gives us sort of a roadmap that we can pick and choose from. So this is how this project or this final outcome is not this is how the markets have to move forward. This is really this is the information we found. This is what our recommendations are. And then really determining, that's really up to us, our board and our internal staff, on how we make that become a reality and implement it. Now, obviously, our hope is that always we build long-lasting relationships with anyone that we do business with. And so there's always potential for follow-up, but we really see this as more of the blueprint, more of the sort of analysis of where we could go to make sure, and then we sort of do the implementation process internally.
Okay. And what about access to the staff and leadership just to get information that will help in the research to provide the options that you will want?
So I really see this as a project that incorporates all of us. This isn't a project that's going to be able to be done without input from our staff, our merchants, our board, external partners. So to me, really the outcomes, this is going to be a all hands on deck effort around what we look at. I think it's, we're looking at financial modeling. We're looking at information that's going to be needed from our finance department. We're going to need information from our leasing department because analyzing our existing rent revenues are going to be important. So I see this being really incorporated into our entire team in terms of how the outcomes are reached. And then also external partners in our board.
Has
Can you
there
talk-
been,
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
has there been another study done similar to this in the past, given your history?
So actually, no, this will be the first of its kind for Baltimore Public Markets and Lexington Market. Previously, the operation was really focused on tenant management. And so really, probably up until about 2019, I think the organization operated as a property management company primarily. And so our big expenses and sort of how we move forward was really based on rent revenue and making sure the markets just were there. As new leadership came on, as our board changed, we really began to look at sort of the role of the markets in the broader community. And so that's really how we've landed here. Is there is a massive amount of potential here that we've never really explored. And so this is our opportunity to start that process.
Okay. I just was trying to get, since your long history, that efforts were made to track, how many tenants over time. Is there a historical type
Yes. Yep.
perspective there?
Yep. So there's a lot of data that we'll have available to you, but actually bringing it together, this is the first time that will be able to happen and have it analyzed and really think about in a strategic way.
Okay. Well, it's good to know that you have it, and that's the essential.
Yep.
And finally, as you look at the contribution of your markets to the city's based economy, anything you have done with that, or maybe studies looking at that contribution?
So I think that is actually going to be a part of this, is really thinking about what's the economic impact of the markets overall for the city. I think that's something that we've continued to ask ourselves internally, but really given just our capacity right now and leadership transition, we haven't been able to dig in. We do have sales data for 2 of the markets that we operate, which is Lexington and Holland's Market. And we're moving in the direction of standardizing point of sale systems to be able to do that at all of our markets eventually. But that really does require a level of cooperation with our merchants that we're still kind of working through and figuring out what that looks like. We do have visitor data that we get from Visit Baltimore and other partners. So again, we have data to start really pulling that together, but we haven't had the internal capacity to truly study that holistically. And so I think that's one of our hopes from this project. We may not dig into it fully because it is such a big, big encompassing proposal that we're asking for people to pull together. But I think perhaps it's a piece of it that we'll be able to then have a foundation to move forward in the next part of this, in the next phase.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Thank you. What else? Nicole joined us. So Nicole, just really quickly, do you want to do a quick introduction and anything else, anything you'd like to share about the proposal? Oh, you're on mute.
Stop. So I'm Nicole. I'm the Chief Financial Officer, and I'm also Randy's co-interim CEO until they bring a new CEO on board. A lot of people have said to me as CFO, why am I not doing this project? And honestly, between Randy and I, we have so much other stuff on our plate. We just don't have the bandwidth. So we're looking forward to somebody coming in here with fresh set of eyes and telling us, what they think the potential of the markets are. Randy has her ideas, I have my ideas, but I think it'll be great to get an independent assessment. So I'm excited to see the results.
Thanks, lady. Any other questions that you guys have?
One question is around from a programmatic perspective, how you think about this work involving kind of a review of existing program and value generation and ways to make modifications or enhancements or tweaks that move towards kind of that value maximization or revenue opportunities versus thinking about net new things that you would be doing.
I think it's both.
Yeah.
I really think it's both. I think there's a massive amount of flexibility in terms of analyzing what we're currently doing. Mm-hmm. Transparently, nothing is perfect right now. It is really thinking about where we build on existing, but also then exploring potential for new. And I think there's an opportunity to do both. And so that's kind of my hope from this, is really thinking about what are we doing that we should continue doing versus not continuing to do, and then where can we really dig in that in ways that we haven't thought about before. Anything
Yeah.
else?
So maximizing existing revenue channels while exploring new ones.
Mhm.
Yep.
I was curious about the timing, the October 1st deadline, if that's tied to any sort of like funding or any other kind of strategic decisions, or just sort of a nice date.
October felt good. I mean, I think it is. We're approaching the end of the year. I think that we also are very anxious to start to dig into this work. Our hope is that by the end of July, sometime in August, we'll be able to bring on the permanent CEO. And so that would really sort of complement the onboarding of that person. And then really our goal is to think about a larger sort of strategic plan for the organization. But we'd like to have this done first. And so the sooner we get this done, the sooner we're able to start sort of the next phases of some of this.
Yep. Thank you.
Do you see flexibility in that October 1st date?
It depends on who you ask.
Okay.
I try to be flexible at everything that I do, because we understand this is not tied to a specific funding source. And so we do have flexibility in that area. Also, the markets are complex. We have merchants who have been here for decades. We have new businesses. We have a very sort of strong relationship with the city and the communities in which our markets are located. And so in sort of understanding that and experiencing that myself, I realize that it may expand. What we don't want to do is have this be the never-ending project that continues in perpetuity. So, I think some flexibility, as long as we're transparent and working as partners, is acceptable and possible. I wouldn't want to see it go much beyond January, because I think kicking this off in the new fiscal or the new calendar year would be a nice way to move into the next phase of what we're doing.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
While I'm unmuted, I guess one other question is, do you have an expectation for how much of this work is done in person versus virtual? How do you all tend to operate as an organization? I suspect that there's an element of this where FaceTime is really crucial and important, but how much of that weighted against virtual? Curious about your preferences there.
I prefer in person as much as possible. I think that especially when we start to think about the work that we're doing inside the communities, having firsthand sort of access to that, I think, is really important. Meetings and sort of up to strategic updates, things like that, absolutely. But when there is going to require sort of some aspect of this, I would probably say at least 60% should be in person, especially in terms of the data gathering and analysis of what's happening now.
Yeah, understanding the current lay of the land, the unique nature of the work, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, for sure.
And especially because each of the markets is located in a different neighborhood, and Baltimore is a city made up of neighborhoods, really. And so, that sort of creates different identity for each of our markets that I think is going to have to be taken into consideration too. Any other questions, guys?
On that note, I didn't see in your proposal any budget definition of what do you expect you have available for this project. And obviously, as a nonprofit entity, we know budgets are constrained where opportunities are challenged, as earlier identified.
Yes.
Just trying to get a sense of just where this might fit in line, or I guess that's what you're expecting the proposals to provide for you. I
It
understand
is.
that nature, but if you can share with that, or maybe other, since you haven't done a similar study, where other funding proposals have been at in budget lines.
Nicole, I'm gonna defer to you on the cost and sort of
So this isn't a budgeted cost. This is something that the board just recently decided on. So it's not something that's in our budget. It's something that we will have to make work, for lack of a better term. And currently we don't have a budget for anything like this right now. We haven't done anything like this. Does that answer your question? I'm sorry.
Yes, it does. Would I suppose or presuppose that any studies of this nature may have come under the city's economic development group? Maybe they had looked at marketplaces such as uh, the footprint that you have in the city, to look at their contributions, or is this all together new for the
This
city of
is, yeah, this is all together new.
Yes.
So, and the board didn't want to they didn't want to have the RFP with a cost or a budget. They were afraid that, either everything would come in right at a budget number, or we could potentially exclude people that could do a really good job because it was under a threshold. So they decided to leave it without a dollar value.
Understood.
and I think just to follow up on that, I think that, there may have been BDC, Baltimore Development Corporation, or some of the other economic entities in the city may have studied the markets as part of as a small part of larger economic impact or economic studies, but really digging in specifically to the markets has not happened in terms of what I'm aware of. I've been working in the Baltimore space in this sort of economic engine space since probably about 2019. And I haven't seen anything fully come out of that. Obviously, whatever we have access to, we'll share, and we can reach out to our partners at BDC and Visit Baltimore Downtown Partnership for any additional information. But really, this is new territory for us, to really dive in exclusively to the markets and how they are, seen, and what is the opportunity there, because I think there is just so much untapped potential here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
And the timeline for the proposal?
It's due on the 20th. I know it's tight, but I got a very ambitious board that likes to get information, gets things done.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay. So if you have questions, feel free to email Lanice. What is the email again? Questions?
It's RFP questions at baltimoremarkets.org.
Yes. I should have been able to remember that. Sorry, guys. So feel free to ask those. We will post them. If you have a specific question after the process, because I do know that this is quick and getting all your questions in, may be challenging by end of day today or tomorrow, feel free to reach out to that email. Lanice will continue to check. We'll do our best to get answers and be as transparent as possible, because we want to make sure that you have what you need in order to give a really strong proposal. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. I can't wait to read these, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, y'all.